Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Margaret Yates, and I'm founder of Zen Divorce TV. And today I'm interviewing the lovely Andrew Wayfinder Hryniewicz. Have I got that right, Andy?
It's Hryniewicz.
Almost got it now. I'm sorry. I'm really not very good at this. But Andy is a psychotherapist and a spiritual energy healer. And he brings these two things together to help people heal from a broken relationship. And I find this really fascinating. So I can't wait to hear more about particularly the spiritual side of things, Andy, because I think that's quite important. People often miss out on that. They'll think about what's happening in the here and now, but maybe not the spiritual side of things. So could you tell us a little bit more about what that means and how that can help people heal their broken relationships?
Yeah, so hi, Margaret. Let me think. Let me stop for a second. Well, as a sort of spiritual energy healer, one of the big things that I work with is the soul. And my understanding and experience of it is the soul is sort of what animates and guides and directs you in your life. It's sort of like your innermost essence.
Okay.
And the thing is, things can happen in life that will block your connection or fragment your soul, and big trauma and big shocks, betrayals, losses, rejections, accidents, those sorts of things can, have a big impact in being really connected with yourself.
Right.
So in one sense, the heart of the work, the heart of working with people who've been through these sorts of events is to find out if there is anything that's sort of blocking or limiting that full connection with your juicy self. And then once you've regained that, you are literally more whole. You are more yourself. And you might even be more yourself than you've ever been.
Right. Well, how can that happen then?
You mean, how
can you be more yourself than you've ever been? How would that work?
Well, probably one of two things. You might have already had events in your life previous to the divorce or the breakup or whatever it is that you're aware of right now, mm-hmm. that has caused you to, in a sense, start off already a little bit fragmented. Stuff in your childhood. And there can even be stuff from previous lives, so that you can actually literally be born already with some of yourself missing.
Okay. I've heard quite a lot of people that I've come across have spoken about that, about previous lives. Mm-hmm. And that's quite an interesting concept. Probably for some people may not have really kind of gotten into that before. Is it possible you could explain a little bit more about that and how that kind of affects us, or how we kind of come into this life if we've already experienced previous lives?
Well, I remember when I first stumbled into this work in 2008, I was, already a psychotherapist, but various explosions in my life caused me to go look into other explanations, other experiences. And I had this experience of recovering what presented themselves to me as past lives.
Oh, right.
And I was familiar with the theory of past lives from having studied yoga and a certain amount of, Indian meditation techniques and schools, that there's this idea that, the soul never dies. It just comes into, different lifetimes after lifetimes. Mm-hmm. And that's what karma means, karma means consequences or results. So that what happens from one lifetime, if you're a bad person in a lifetime, for example, you'll be punished by coming back at a less advanced state. So within this theory, within this understanding, consciousness, you can go through lifetimes as an animal, and then you become, kind of a human of a lower position. And as you become more and more evolved, you get a higher position.
So you kind of move up the scale, if you like.
That's one sort of sense of it. Now, at the time, I was also, because I was a therapist, I was in supervision, where I would go talk to my therapist on a regular basis about what was going on in my life and understanding stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time talking to him and saying, look, I'm having these memories I'm having this experience, these meditation, these exercises that are showing me a past life story. And I can put on, the hat that says I believe in past lives, and that's how I explain it. But I can also put on my, my therapist hat and just say this image of a past life is a kind of metaphoric projection of unconscious conflicts. And that's a lot of psychological babble, which basically says the stuff that's unresolved in me becomes like a dream. It becomes a story that has kind of a structure that exemplifies or illustrates that dream or that issue in my body, in my memory or in my emotions. So past lives, I've worked with enough people, literally I've done hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of sessions with people where, so many of them come back with past life experiences and memories that I really feel there's something very real going on there. So in other words, you can, it appears, you can have experiences from previous lifetimes that kind of fragment you or cause you to believe and act already from birth in a certain way. And that kind of organizes and structures what happens in your lifetime. It's like you come in with already, it's not destiny. I mean, it's not, we still have free will and we still have control and we still have choices, but it's just as in this lifetime. I mean, if you don't do your homework, for example, as a kid, you don't get very good grades and you don't necessarily go to, the best school possible or get into the best job possible. So, your early activities follow you. The consequences of them follow you. Similarly, things that have happened in other lifetimes will follow you in the same way.
Until you resolve them. Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that I work is if there is a story like that, we go find out what it is and we change it and we change the beliefs and the agreements. But getting back to, your first question of sort of getting over stuff, one of the other consequences of one of these events, whether it's something in this lifetime, in your childhood, or something in your family, or something in your past, it can cause your sort of your deeper self, your soul, to go into hiding for self-protection. And so that when part of your soul is missing, it's literally, you're not all there. You can't make the best decisions. You're not as aware as you could be. So as you remake those connections, you're just more yourself than you've ever been. And it's hard to imagine that because, how can you imagine being more than you've ever experienced? Well, when you are and you do, it's like, oh my God.
I guess it's then, once you feel whole again, you feel more in flow. Whereas if you have this fragmented soul that you're talking about, that's the part where you feel things, it's almost like you're pushing uphill. All the relationships that you have are the same ones, keep turning up all the time because you're still not feeling that whole part of you, because there's a little bit of you, bit of your soul not meeting up. Would that be right?
That's definitely part of it. I mean, because you're not fully present. The other thing that can happen in these sort of soul traumas, whether they're, as I said, whether it's a childhood thing or a family thing or a past life thing, is in the actual trauma, you can make an agreement with the universe. So, for example, the man who sort of taught me these methods, a shaman, was working with a client who had come to him. So this client had come to him needing help with their daughter who'd gotten cancer. And they discovered that about 300 years before that, this woman had been a very poor peasant woman with 2 children in the woods, looking for food, and had gone into an abandoned cottage looking, if there was any food. And the cottage collapsed and trapped her and her 2 children. And it was winter, night was coming, and she knew that she was not going to survive. Nobody was going to survive. So her dying prayer, her dying wish was, please God, take my children before me.
Right.
So that prayer was still in effect.
Oh, I see. So the mother of this child with cancer that you're talking about,
Yeah,
that was her soul, her prayer.
300 years she had made this prayer at this time.
Right.
And her intention was, was not kill my children before me, literally, but it was rather make sure my children know I'm there for them.
Yeah.
So that effectively they go before me. But that really wasn't what she wanted. So she had to make a new agreement and make this new agreement at the soul level, so that could free her child from, in a sense, it wasn't a conscious curse, but in a sense it was a curse, because it was what she had asked for.
Okay, and did that kind of deal with everything then? That cure?
Well, and I mean, my own experience, it was I stumbled into working spiritually and energetically with these same methods, and I had a long history of relationships that just ended abruptly, that blew up, betrayals, and both professional and personal, and even family.
Okay.
And I discovered a past life where I had been ambushed and betrayed and murdered.
Oh, right.
And it was because I was trying to leave the Crusades to go find love somewhere.
Okay.
And in order to not have any sort of scandal, my father's retainers ambushed me and killed me.
Oh gosh!
But
that was an interesting past life. Goodness.
But that set up this pattern of these betrayals.
Okay.
And then when I changed the pattern, when I changed the agreement, things started changing in my life and are still changing. And that's kind of why I, my sort of tagline is, because this is what happened. I mean, it was, within a year of doing that, that I finally met Karina. I was finally in a relationship that lasted and that was, loving and wonderful. And it had taken me 49 years to get there.
Right.
So I want, my clients to take a whole lot less time.
Don't we all? That's kind of why we do this work, isn't it? Because we really want our clients not to have to go through what we did. So that's interesting. So, but by understanding about that past life, being in the Crusades and being ambushed and everything, you were then able to deal with that in this life. So what do you actually do? Is there some sort of process that you'd go through?
Yeah. Well, one thing to say is it was part of the process is, quote, understanding. It's sort of seeing what it was that happened.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But again, it's more than just understanding. You are actually changing the contract. You are saying the old contract is over, and you're literally writing or making a new one, just as you are finding your missing soul part and whatever got lost or hurt and bringing them back. And the way you do that is through a kind of meditation.
Okay.
This is working with shamanic methods and materials, and
that's how you work with clients, is it? You would help them get into this meditation, and
I teach them. I teach them how to change their awareness, change their consciousness at will. It's literally like turning on a light switch.
Okay.
And going into other levels of reality where your soul part is hiding, where the contract has been written, it's being held, where, in fact, even where your beloved could be. So it is possible for people to meet the spirit of the person who they want to wind up with or are going to wind up with.
Really? Gosh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not anything I can promise, but it's something that you can go. You can
work on. So
you can go with the intention of meeting them and see if they're there and if they're ready to meet you.
Okay.
So again, this isn't a spiritual shopping network.
No, I didn't think. And I guess, you have to be ready to meet your spiritual partner, don't you? So if you're not ready, if you haven't done enough work on yourself, however you do that, you kind of need to be in that right space, I guess, that right energy. Is it more about energy?
I think it's energy, it's timing, it's preparation. So again, it's even when you're working with these sort of spirit helpers and teachers. I mean, we're surrounded by something much, much bigger than ourselves. That's wiser, that's more concerned, that's infinitely helpful and infinitely powerful. And so we are part of sort of patterns that are bigger than we realize. So that on the conscious level, you can think, I want this, but that may or may not be what your soul had agreed to.
Right.
Or what your soul really wants. So some of the work is learning to, get in touch with these deeper patterns and these deeper desires, these deeper learnings.
So it's what is in your highest good, really. So how do you work with clients? What say I came to you for a session. How just briefly describe what working with Andy would be like.
Well, generally speaking, there is just kind of an exploration process, a short conversation to see if what you're going through, the problem you have, or the situation you're in, makes sense or is relevant to the way I work with people.
Right.
That experience has shown, I've been working with clients from about 2011, that the way Spirit has kind of directed me into working with people is that I teach them how to do these things. I teach them how to make this connection with spirit helpers and with other dimensions so that they can go solve these problems. Because one of the things is when we're working with these soul agreements, these soul contracts, the only person who can change them is the soul that made them. It can't be done for you by anybody else. So the heart of the work is getting you to the position where you can do that. Okay. So there's sort of like a minimum amount of work that needs to be done. The whole process takes about 12 or 14 of these meditations. Right. And they're 15 to 20 or so minutes each. Okay. And so if I run small groups periodically, and if you do it in a group, it's a weekend. Right. But I can also do the same amount of work one-to-one in a day. Right. Granted, a fairly intense day. Yeah. But because we're working one-to-one, we can go faster than with the group. But they both have their uses and their powers. And that's sort of the first step, is to do this kind of very deep rebuilding of your soul's beliefs and healing this experience of trauma or loss or betrayal, whether it's a childhood experience or an ancestral or a past life. And in many cases, that's done the deal. That's done the deed. In other cases, people find that they want to continue working with me a little bit to kind of cement, because what happens is you've quote fixed the problem. You've healed the soul wound. You've recovered the lost parts. You've stepped into the future to kind of connect with the beloved, and you've healed your heart of love. Yeah. So I mean, a tremendous amount of. I mean, one client commented that this experience was like 20 years of psychotherapy. Oh wow, gosh, that sounds really cool. So I mean, a tremendous amount of healing and change takes place in the weekend. Yeah. Or in the one day. And for many people, that is enough. But since the heart of this process is connecting with spirit helpers, with the universe, with this something else that's much bigger, some people feel like they want to really, really learn how to work and integrate that experience into their life. And in that case, I suggest we continue to work. I typically run about a 6-month group where you come in and continue to work twice a month with these spirit helpers and really groove in, cement in this relationship so that people wind up having, they're going through life and they're aware of almost like guardian angels. They're aware of something's with them, something's watching over them, something's guarding them. And that becomes incredibly, well, I mean, it's certainly been my experience. I mean, yes, like all humans, there are times when I feel lonely. There are times when I worry about how the rent's going to get paid and, all that sort of stuff. But at a very, very deep level, I'm never alone. I don't live in a lonely universe. I live in a universe that's full.
Okay.
And
because a lot of people do feel, even though they're with other people, they do feel that sense of loneliness, don't they? I've heard that quite a lot. That something isn't quite right, something's missing from their life, but they can't put their finger on it. They don't really know how to pick up the pieces, say after they've come out of a broken relationship, because they're scared and they get even more lonely, because then they kind of keep themselves to themselves and don't even go out. So I guess finding this part of you and having this support system, if you like, going on for a bit, can really help people get into the space where they need to be able to kind of, I guess eventually they would be able to support themselves with it. They get to a stage where they would be in the situation where they would just support themselves going on and maybe be able to help other people, or how does it work?
Well, I mean, putting on my therapist hat is, you also, there's a very real process of grieving and dealing with the memories of the past relationship and the emotional bruising and that's very real, and that needs to be done.
And with this would help you through that, though. I think that's what I was trying to say. The support of the universal network that you would have behind you could actually help you through that process more easily.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just by way of example, I mean, sadly, not quite 2 years ago, my Karina, my soulmate and the love of my life, got cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Actually, wait a second. She died about 1.5 years ago. It was about 2 years before that of treatment and illness. And if I didn't have this connection with my spirit helpers and teachers, I know I wouldn't have made it through. I mean, as horrible and difficult, and I still miss the hell out of her. And I'm still very aware of, and I'm also aware that she's out there in some way. I've had connections with her. I've worked with my own shaman to sort of make sure that her soul and my soul are at peace with each other, and there's no residual stuff. So it's it is very, very nourishing and encouraging to have that. And it's also good, to have a circle of friends and to have people, and, again, putting on the therapist hat, that, one of the main things I always mention people is, breakup is, it's a physical experience. I mean, the pain of breakup literally lights up parts of your brain.
Yeah.
And, so the thing, I always mention the 3 S's, which is, you need to share kind of the experience, be able to talk with trusted friends who will do a certain amount of supporting. This does actually let your brain process and do a little bit of pain killing and then some form of settling, some form of meditation, exercise, yoga that helps you kind of calm your system down, calm your nervous down. And then sleep is the other really important thing. And it's the thing that generally falls apart the most with these sort of traumatic experiences.
I know a lot of people find trouble with sleeping. They wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep again. And then, of course, the brain starts racing around, doesn't it? And all the thoughts come in. Yeah. I mean, that's when it's quite useful to have a guided meditation that you can actually listen to, I think. Do you actually do guided meditations on a MP3 or anything that people would listen to? Or?
Well, actually, if you go to my website, truelovethatlasts.com, you can sign up for a sort of a podcast. I talk about some of the stuff to do around healing the breakup pain. I talk a little bit about the patterns, the stages of a healthy relationship and the natural evolution of the relationship. But the last roughly third of that is a spirit energy healing thing, a meditation called Cut the Ties That Bind.
Okay, yeah.
And it's for cutting the energy to past events, people, or places that are pulling life and energy out of you. Yeah. And I liken it to it's like psychic or psychological flossing.
Psychological flossing. Oh, that sounds good. I've not heard of it described as that.
Well, just when you chew food, stuff gets stuck in your teeth.
Yeah.
When you live life, you form connections to people and events and places. And when you're lucky, those connections are healthy and nourishing. But if not, they can literally be draining you and sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
So this is a method I make sure to teach anybody I've ever worked with, because it's the simplest, single most powerful thing you can do for yourself. Like I said, it's psychic cleaning out the stuff stuck in your teeth.
Yeah.
Definitely get that recording, and you can. Obviously, don't listen to it in the car while driving.
Oh, no, you mustn't do that. No, that's absolutely important, isn't it? Or when there's anything else going on around that needs your attention.
Because it takes about 20 minutes, but it is a very powerful meditative process of cleaning up and clearing out.
So perhaps a good time to listen would be first thing in the morning before you actually get up and start the day, or maybe last thing at night.
I would say try it in the evening before going to bed. Because sometimes this cutting these ties and the healing can be quite an energetic process. You can actually you can feel stuff being released and stuff moving around in your body and things like that. So it's probably better off to go to sleep on that than to wake up and go diving into your day with it.
Okay. Yeah, we often say it's best to sleep on things, don't we? That's a saying that we certainly have around here. I'm going to sleep on it and see how I feel in the morning. So that's quite good. So so that's great to know that you've got the podcast on there. If anybody wanted to have a session with you or join one of your workshops, is all that information on your website too?
Yeah, go to the website and get the recording, and then I forget exactly where, but there's the recording thing. You can also do a masterclass, which is it's like doing a session with me where I take you through, you evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your relationship, your relationship history pattern, and also kind of start to make a plan for moving forwards.
Right.
And that's a paid thing for giving you a tremendous amount of homework, and then baked into that is a 50-minute phone call with me to go over what you've discovered.
Okay.
But you can also just book in a 15-minute chat so we can take a look at what you've been going through and whether it makes sense for you to pursue this line of work rather than something else.
Okay.
So, in other words, if I can help you, I'll suggest this is what we should do. And if I can't, if I feel it's more appropriate for you to do something else, I'll suggest the something else.
Oh, that's great. That's a bit like me with my coaching. Sometimes coaching isn't appropriate for that particular person at that particular time. So I tend to do like you, have an initial consultation, and then, if it isn't appropriate, there's usually something else that might work for the person that I can refer them to. So great.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree, because if you have the problem I solve, I'll solve it. But if you don't have the problem I solve, there's no point in doing any work together.
Absolutely. I totally get that. And I'm totally on that wavelength. Okay. Well, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you, Andy. Really interesting. concept with the psychology and the shamanism together. I've not met anyone else who actually combines those two. And I think I'm certainly going to go and find out a lot more about you now on your website and listen to your podcast. And I do encourage everyone else to go and do that, just to explore and find out a little bit more about how Andy works and what he does, and download the podcast. Don't listen to it while you're driving, of course. As Andy said, it's probably best to listen to it in the evening just before you go to bed. So thank you so much, Andy. And I bet you'd love to hear from people if they download the podcast and they actually, find changes happening. Do you kind of encourage people to email you or get in touch?
Oh, definitely. I'm always fascinated by what happens with people, because I think, the heart of, I would say, the heart of working with spirit in this way, there's probably two big things. One, we are part of patterns much bigger than we realize, and we are much bigger than we realize. There's also, my meditation teacher used to say this, had this great Sufi saying, which was, the bird of paradise flies to heaven on two wings. One of them is self-effort, and the other is grace. And we need both. I mean, our culture is almost schizophrenic, because I think you have the people who are like super into self-effort and I'm in charge and I've got personal power and, working really, really hard. Or then you have kind of the loosey-goosey, airy-fairies, sort of the secret end of the spectrum. Yeah. Sort of like, no effort whatsoever. I just sort of like wish on it and the unicorns deliver it.
Yeah, it's quite confusing, isn't it? On the one hand, you hear that just it's easy to do things, and on the other hand, it's no, you can't do anything without hard work. So that's an interesting.
Well, you need. I'd say you need both.
Yeah.
You need to take effort and take action, and you also need to allow, for the support and the help to come in.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. That was really, really interesting. And your details will be on the end screen. So anybody that wants to get in touch with you, please do. Download the podcast, and please do give Andy some feedback on it, because it's lovely to know, what experiences you get from that. So thanks very much for today, Andy. Lovely to talk to you.
And, and thanks, everyone. Be well.
Bye for now. Thank you.